Right now, your roof is absorbing heat like a cast iron skillet on a burner. Your air conditioner has been running all day. You are paying to cool a house that your own attic is actively cooking. You put in the smart thermostat last spring. You had the attic fan installed in May. But the house is still 80 degrees. The meter is still spinning, and your bill climbs higher every month. My Appalachian grandmother never owned an air conditioner, not one. For over 80 summers in a holler outside Grundy, Virginia, where the August heat comes up off the rocks in waves, you can see ripple. She kept that cabin at 68 degrees on a 95-degree afternoon without any machine. Just one mixture she stirred in a tin bucket every April. A strip of plain cotton she tacked up under the rafters. And one habit she did every July morning at sunrise that took her 40 seconds. She raised 6 children in that one-room cabin, and 11 grandchildren slept on the floorboards every July. Not one of us ever woke up sweating. And in 1965, this information was hidden from the public. My name's Tucker West, and before my grandmother passed last fall, she handed me a composition book, her own crooked handwriting. 80 years of summer afternoons in that cabin. Every method, every mixture, every detail. I've put it all together for you into one blueprint. Scan the QR code on your screen to get your copy. Over the next few minutes you'll see the $7 coating you can brush on your roof this weekend, a $4 piece of cotton you can nail under your rafters in 20 minutes, and a method from a 1947 University of Tennessee field bulletin that was pulled out of every county extension office in this state 61 years ago. Total cost under $15. Works for any house and any apartment. Now, before I show you what she painted on her roof, you need to understand why you've never heard of it. Because what happened in 1965 wasn't an accident. The average American family spends $719 cooling their home every summer. Just cooling, not the furnace or the water heater. Across a 30-year mortgage, that comes to $21,570 spent doing badly what your great-grandmother did for free. The Department of Energy confirmed that 93% of the heat entering your house through the roof arrives as radiant energy, not hot air seeping through cracks, and not warmth conducted through beams, but invisible infrared radiation beaming straight down from your shingles into your living room. You cannot feel it the way you feel a hot wind, but it is there, and it is the reason your air conditioner runs until midnight in August. On a summer afternoon, a dark asphalt roof reaches 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and your attic climbs to 140. That superheated air presses down through your ceiling insulation hour after hour, like a hot hand on a cold one. Your air conditioner was never designed to win that fight. It was designed to keep running, and the longer it runs, the more you pay. That is not a defect in the machine. That is the business model. There are 140 million single-family homes in America, and every one of them has an attic running as a furnace, feeding money to a power company every hour of every summer day. The utility companies profit. The HVAC industry profits. The shingle manufacturers profit too, because a hot attic destroys shingles from the underside and turns a 30-year roof into a 15-year roof. You buy a new roof twice as often as your grandfather did. Nobody told you that either. Mountain grannies never had this problem. Not because they had better houses, and not because they were tougher, but because they understood something about heat that nobody tells you anymore. My Mawmaw kept her cabin outside Grundy, Virginia at 68 degrees in July without a single machine. I know because I spent every summer there from age 5 to age 16, and I never once heard an air conditioner run. Her composition book is on my kitchen table right now. The first thing to understand is the principle. Hot air rises always. Every civilization that ever survived extreme heat independently arrived at the same answer. Give the hot air a way out at the top and pull cool air in from below. That is not folk wisdom. That is thermodynamics. And the same law that governs the inside of a steam boiler governs the inside of your house. Mawmaw's cabin was built in 1887. I went up into that attic as a boy and saw rough-cut chestnut boards with visible gaps at the ridge beam, maybe an inch wide in places. On a still July afternoon, you could hold your hand under the ridge and feel the air moving. Not strong, just steady. Mawmaw called it the cabin breathing. I thought she was being poetic, but she was not. That deliberate gap at the ridge was not a flaw in the building. It was the entire cooling system. Before any white settler ever crossed the Blue Ridge, the Cherokee in these mountains were building their summer houses the same way, with high-peaked roofs and open ridge poles. Their word for it translated roughly to the house that breathes. Dr. Paul Hamill documented this in the Cherokee Nation Archive in 1975, and the drawings he collected from elders show the exact same construction Mawmaw's great-grandfather used. The Persians built wind towers 3,000 years ago using the same physics. The Romans channeled air under stone floors and called it the hypocaust. Every civilization that mastered extreme heat used the same principle of hot air out the top and cool air in from below. The mountain grannies of Appalachia did not invent this. They inherited it, carrying it from Scotland and Ireland and England down the Great Wagon Road into these hollers, and they never let it go. My Mawmaw's people came down that road in the 1750s. They built cabins that worked with the heat instead of fighting it, and they kept building them the same way for 200 years. Because the cabins worked, and because they never needed anyone's permission to do what made sense. Then in 1965, somebody made a decision that you should never know any of this. In the 1950s, the forced air furnace manufacturers launched an advertising campaign that positioned sealed, insulated homes as the symbol of American modernity. Full-page ads ran in Life, in Better Homes and Gardens, and in the Saturday Evening Post, showing smiling families standing in front of chrome-plated vents. The message was simple. If you still had a drafty old house with gaps at the ridge beam, you were poor, you were behind. The old ways were labeled primitive and unsanitary, something your immigrant grandfather did because he did not know any better. In 1947, the University of Tennessee Agricultural Experiment Stations published Bulletin number 312. The title was Natural Ventilation Methods for the Appalachian Farmhouse, written by Dr. Raymond Harwell, an extension agent out of Knoxville. 22 pages. It held diagrams of open ridge construction, gable vent placement, the window sequencing method, and the morning lockup habit, all documented from surveys of mountain families across Cock County, Sevier County, and Buchanan County. In 1965, that bulletin was discontinued. Not banned, not disproven, just no longer reprinted. By 1968, it was out of every county extension office in Tennessee and Virginia. By 1975, it existed in 3 university archives. The committee that recommended discontinuing passive ventilation bulletins across the Southern Extension Services had 11 members, and 7 of them were affiliated with the Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Institute, or its member manufacturers. 64%. The Foxes wrote the rules for the henhouse. I drove to the Hodges Library at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville last September. A librarian named Carol Whitman pulled the archive box for me, and she told me I was the second person to request that file in 31 years. The pages were yellowed and the corners soft. The diagram of the open ridge on page 6 had a pencil annotation in the margin, where someone had written, "Still works in neat handwriting sometime in the 1970s. Nobody had opened it since." If you are sitting in a house built in 1978 and you are thinking this only applies to people living in log cabins, the next part is specifically for you. You do not need to rebuild your attic, tear out a single board, or hire a contractor. You need about $40 and one Saturday morning. The first technique is the $7 one. Lime wash on the roof. You go to any hardware store and buy one 50-pound bag of Type S hydrated lime, which runs between $7 and $14 depending on your area. Mix 1 part lime powder with 2 parts water until the consistency is like thin milk. Take a thick nap paint roller and apply 2 coats to the roof over one weekend afternoon. That is the whole job. A dark asphalt roof reaches 160 degrees Fahrenheit on a summer afternoon. A lime-washed roof reaches 100 degrees on the same afternoon. That 60-degree difference is heat that never enters your attic. never presses down on your ceiling, and never makes your air conditioner work. Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory measured this in 1973 with two identical flat roofs side by side, one dark and one lime-washed. The coated roof dropped 40 degrees at the surface, and the interior temperature fell 8 degrees. No fans, no electricity, just physics and a white surface. Mawmaw whitewashed every external surface on the cabin every April, including the roof, the chicken coop, the spring house, and the trunks of the apple trees up to about waist height. I remember the smell of it, sharp and clean, like wet stone. She mixed it in the same tin bucket she used for everything else. She called it putting the house to bed for summer. It took her 2 mornings. She did it for 60 years. The Asphalt Roofing Manufacturers Association has lobbied against reflective roofing requirements in state after state. In Tennessee, in 2025, a lobbyist convinced a state representative to strip a reflective roofing requirement out of a commercial building energy code. The vote passed. Someone who sells dark shingles asked a politician for a favor and got it, and the rest of the state pays the cooling bill for that vote. The second technique costs nothing, and it contradicts everything modern energy advice tells you. Close the house during the day, open it at night. The modern instinct when it gets hot is to open the windows for a cross breeze. That is exactly wrong. Every time you open a window during peak heat, you are cooking hot air into your walls, your ceiling, and your floors. Stone and wood absorb heat. By 2 in the afternoon, your house has become a thermal battery, storing heat that will radiate into your bedroom until 2 in the morning. The hotter the air outside, the more heat you are loading into the structure of your home. Every mountain family in these hollers knew the rule. Lock the house tight at sunrise, close every window, and pull every shade on the side that faces the sun. Do not open anything until the outside temperature drops below the inside temperature at sundown, which is usually around 7 or 8 in the evening in July. Mawmaw locked the cabin at 9 every morning. I was 8 years old the first summer, I noticed, and I was confused. It was already warm inside. Why close everything up? She looked at me through those wire glasses and said, "Honey, the house is cooler than outside right now. Lock the cold in." By 3 in the afternoon, the outside thermometer on the porch read 92. Inside the cabin, it was 78. She had not run a single machine. At sundown, she opened the front door and the back kitchen window, and the cool evening air pulled through the cabin all night. By dawn, the interior was back down to 68 degrees. She locked it in again at 9 the next morning. That was the entire system. No machine, no bill. Modern energy auditors tell you to ventilate during the day. They tell you to run an attic fan. They tell you a sealed house traps moisture. Some of that is true in winter, but none of it is true on a 95-degree afternoon. The HVAC industry profits every hour you do what they tell you. Every hour. The third technique is $3. Gable vent restoration. Almost every American house built between 1940 and 1990 has triangular gable vents at the 2 short ends of the attic, up near the peak. Most of them are clogged. Paint sealed them shut, bird nests filled them up, or blown-in insulation got dumped on them carelessly 30 years ago by a contractor who did not know or did not care. Go up to your attic on a cool morning with a flashlight and look at those vents from the inside. If you cannot see daylight clearly through them, you have just found the first reason your house is overheating. Clear out the debris and replace any rusted screen with aluminum mesh. About $3 at any hardware store. That is the whole job. These gable vents are the modern equivalent of Mawmaw's open ridge. Hot air exits at the highest point of the attic, and cool air pulls in from below. The stack effect runs all day and all night with no moving parts and no electricity. The same physics the Cherokee used in their summer houses. The same physics the Persians used in their wind towers. Sitting in your attic right now, painted shut. The fourth technique is $4. Cotton muslin across the vent. On the sunny side gable vent, you hang a sheet of plain white cotton muslin across the inside of the opening, using the same $4 fabric you can buy at any fabric store or order from any sewing supply place. The cotton lets air pass through, but it blocks the direct radiant heat that pours through the opening on a summer afternoon. The cotton stays cool because the moving air carries heat away before it can build up in the fabric. This is the same cotton Mawmaw used at the ridge beam of the cabin. Same material, different application. Together with the open ridge, it formed a complete radiant barrier from the top of the roof down to the lowest gap in the wall, all for under $11 in modern money. The textile industry never figured out how to charge you for that. The fifth technique is the one that costs nothing. The wet cotton sheet in the doorway. Every July morning, Mawmaw soaked 2 cotton sheets in cold well water, wrung them out until they were damp but not dripping, and hung them in the doorways between the main room and the back bedroom. I remember running through them as a child, the shock of cold air hitting my face as I passed from one room to the next. That is a sensation I have never felt in any building since. Air moving through wet cotton drops 10 to 15 degrees through evaporative cooling. It is a free swamp cooler, and it works best when there is any air movement at all, even a light cross draft. Combined with the Gable vent restoration you have just done, there is always a cross draft. Cotton appears 3 times in this system: the ridge, the vent, and the doorway. Same material, 3 different points along the heat's path. That is not a coincidence. That is a system. Modern construction did 3 things to break the Appalachian passive system. 3 places where somebody came in and undid what worked for 200 years, and then they sold you a $5,000 air conditioner to compensate. If you have blown in insulation packed tight against your roof rafters, that is the first place. The rafters need to breathe, and insulation belongs on the attic floor, not against the roof deck. If you have a vapor barrier stapled to the underside of your roof deck, that is the second place. It traps heat and moisture, so take it out. If your Gable vents are sealed with spray foam because an energy auditor told you that you were losing efficiency, that is the third place. That auditor was trained by a manual written by people who sell air conditioners. Undo those 3 things in that order, and your house starts working the way houses worked for 200 years before somebody decided to sell you a sealed plastic box. Before the last method, one quick thing. Everything I have been pulling out of that composition book and those old extension archives, the lime wash, the cotton at the ridge, the morning lockup habit, the wet sheets, the 3 things to undo, along with the joint salves, the tick repellents, the sleep teas, and every other method Mawmaw used in 112 years of life without a doctor is all in one book now. It is called Mawmaw Pearl's Appalachian Blueprint, and the link is in the description. But stay right here, because what Mawmaw wrote in her notebook kept her cabin at 68 degrees in July for 60 years, and it costs 4 cents. It is called the stove draw. I asked a building science professor at the University of Tennessee about this technique, and he had never heard of it. I asked a master carpenter in Asheville, who has been restoring Appalachian cabins for 35 years. He had never heard of it either. I called the Foxfire Center in Mountain City, Georgia, which has published 9 volumes documenting Appalachian folk knowledge since 1966, and they had 1 paragraph about it in their entire archive. That is how thoroughly this was lost. In the mountain cabins of Buchanan County and Dickinson County, Virginia, the kitchen was always positioned on the north side of the cabin, with a tall, narrow window directly opposite the kitchen door. On summer evenings when the house had built up heat during the day, the woman of the house did one specific thing after supper. She opened the kitchen door and the window opposite it and turned the wood stove on low. In Mawmaw's case, after she got a gas range in 1958, she turned on 1 burner at the lowest setting for 40 minutes. That was it. The heat rising from the stove exits through the window, and in doing so it creates a vacuum, a draft. The vacuum pulls cool evening air through the entire house, from the front door, through every room, all the way to the kitchen window. The stove becomes the engine that ventilates the whole cabin, the same physics. Dr. Walter Schaff documented this in 1946 at Penn State, and Dr. Raymond Harwell wrote about this exact technique in 1947 Tennessee Bulletin. He measured 2.5 miles per hour of draft in a farmhouse near Grundy, Virginia on a 92-degree July afternoon. No fan, no machine. 1 burner on low and 2 windows open in the right places. I tested it myself in Mawmaw's cabin the summer I came back, the summer she got sick. The living room dropped from 81 degrees to 73 degrees in 52 minutes. I did not turn on the air conditioner once that night. I slept under a cotton sheet with the windows open and the kitchen window pulling air through the whole house. Running one electric burner on low for 40 minutes costs 4 cents. Your air conditioner costs approximately 50 cents every hour it runs. You are paying 50 cents an hour to do badly what 4 cents a night did perfectly. Mawmaw figured that out. The University of Tennessee figured that out. The Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Institute made sure you never figured it out. I think about Carol Whitman at the Hodges Library handing me that archive box. The yellowed pages, the pencil note in the margin, still works, written by somebody in the 1970s who knew. And then nothing for 31 years before somebody else opened that box. Me. I think about Mawmaw in 1957. She was 45 years old, with 6 children, locking the cabin at 9 every morning, hanging the wet sheets before the heat came, watching the evening draft pull through the kitchen, while the rest of the country was buying their first window units and thinking they were modern. She knew what they did not want her to know, and before she passed last spring at 112, she made sure I wrote every word of it down. You are not crazy for feeling like something was hidden from you. Something was, for 60 years. If you are the kind of person who believes real practical knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect somebody else's quarterly profit, you already know what to do with what you just heard. One thing in the comments. Tell me what your power company charges you per month in July and August. Add up your last 2 summer bills and drop the number and your state. I am building a map of what this industry is taking out of regular American households county by county. I read every single comment. This is not about supporting me. This is about putting the lime back on the roof, about putting the cotton back in the attic, about putting the wet sheet back in the doorway, about remembering what our people knew before somebody decided we needed to forget. And remember, the knowledge was never lost. It was waiting for someone to come looking for it. Everything I showed you here is from my grandmother. Decades of Appalachian knowledge for taking care of your land, your home, and your family without depending on anyone. I've put it all together for you into one blueprint. Scan the QR code on your screen to get your copy, or click the link in the comments section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and remember to subscribe for more Appalachian wisdom. I'll see you in the next one.